So, okay, let me read through the questions here. Yes, I can. How do I properly grade the parking lot so the proposed contours meet the actual ones? You're not necessarily, the goal is not necessarily making your proposed contour meet the actual ones. No, later on you would connect them to the original contours, right? How do you find the accurate spot elevations for the TC and BC? Before we figure out the general contour patterns, we don't recognize you get into the TC and BC yet for the parking lot. Calculating the spot elevations will be the final step, which, yeah, you would be doing that in the next few days. Are my HPS and LPS correct for my swells? We don't really know yet because you have to have your contours, your draft contours to be able to know when and where to create a swell, right? Or if or not to create a swell. How do I find where the contours come out of the apartments? So let's take a look at the parking lot first. So something's changed over here. This changed from having a small crown to having two major swells in the middle, which might not be necessary. You could continue your crown pattern. You could continue the crown pattern right here, okay? And then your 70 would be here. Yeah, essentially you would just basically continue this pattern all the way back to your major road. So that will, if the calculations were correct before, your contour patterns in the parking lot on this side would look like this. I haven't yet checked the angle of your contours, so they look roughly, they look pretty close, but I wouldn't be able to say for sure whether or not your 2.5% and 5%, 2% over here. I would recommend you double check to just make sure that your contours are at the correct angle. For this portion, let me see if I'm here. They don't look like exactly a mirror line, but maybe it's just my, well, if this is the same as that, you basically would end up having the two connection points aligned with each other. Does that make sense? So yeah, if I think the size of the parking lot are the same. So it could be one of the lines are not, or, well, check which line is the correct one and then mirror that one. And then you would get the other line. Okay. So that is the contour pattern in the parking lot. Once you have these contours corrected, your 71, basically, your 72 will come out here, your 71 will come out in the middle over here, right? And then you need to decide where these go based on what elevation here is. Does that make sense? If this is your 71, and that is your 72, and your patio, your front porch here is 71.13. In fact, that means your 71 would be pretty close to your porch, basically because the 71 here is very close to 71, and then depending on what this is, right, you will determine where your 72 is. If this is still 71.13, then your 72 would most likely be hitting in this area because 71.13 cannot be on the high side of your 72 contour. Does that make sense? So these lines will be determined by what you specified as your FFEs for these buildings, and they need to be in the correct relationship with your contours. Yeah. In the middle, right? Because we are looking for 70.5 as the bottom of the curve. That makes the top of the curve 71. And it will be in the halfway, well, in the halfway point between the 70 contour and the 71 contour. And going back to your question of how do I calculate this, you know, there are multiple ways. You could do this point being the same as that point. Does that make sense? And then you would measure this distance using the slope along the crown. Then you would know that spot, which is the same as the bottom of the curve in the corner. And then the top of the curve, you will be just adding 0.5 to that bottom of the curve. So that's how you could calculate the parking lot corners and tangent points. Okay. All right. So let me zoom back out and take a look at your other questions there. So I don't remember if we have gone through these because we still have to verify. Well, to me, definitely this is too high, right? That's too high. And we have to come back to the townhomes to see how many walkout basement we have and how many ADA accessible front units there are. That looks reasonable. That also looks reasonable. So we have 72 over here. You do need to verify if this is too low. It may not be, but you have to come back to this point and see if 2% slope. Now, what if I go up 2% and what that FFE is, right? If it's 2% and you're still higher, or you're still lower than 73.13, that's okay, because you can raise the slope, right? If you use 2%, but the TFFE is higher than 73.13, that would mean you don't have enough slope. That would mean you need to raise that one. I think it's roughly would be in that range, but I can't tell for sure. And then the same thing with this. So this is 72. Do you recall the distance here? Okay, so let's see, if that's 20, then this might be, for instance, 30. If it's 30, if this is 72.5, top of the curve here, 70.5, and then you have 0.63 as a difference. So yeah, this would work. You are at about 2% slope along this walkway. So I would say, yes, FFE here equals to 73.13 would work. And then it looks like this one would work as well because the distance is the same and you're lower here. So you need a higher slope. Let's say, okay. So I would say, yes, your 73.13 and these two units, they would work. Then that means this is 64.13. 64.13 is somewhere over here. So that should work as well. You can drag the 4 up. So back, yes. 64, yes. So basically, you would meet the criteria for 2 basements, 2 porch, all accessible just by these 2 units. Okay, and the other units, you can feel free to use the wall. You don't have to have a walkout basement. That's okay. That one's still too high. So that needs to change. The FFE here needs to change. Otherwise, this set, that set, and this set, you can use these numbers. Okay. So your next step would be revise the contour here. Double check the angle of these contours in the parking lot. Rework the FFE of the 4th unit, and then move forward in connecting the contours in here. Even if it's a draft, make a guess. If you are not sure about a certain line where they go and connect, make a guess, and then we can critique that, right? And then we can show you how to find out the correct location. So a lot of these are not accurate calculations because they are mostly grassed. The portion of the contour that are not flexible are the ones that are on the paved surface. The contours portion on the grassed areas, they are estimates. They are not accurate. They don't have to be accurate calculations. So once you know, for instance, where the 70 comes out, you would say, okay, my 70 probably would be, the first contour that attached the wall here. Then you would be able to know, okay, my HPS would be roughly 69 point something. Okay, without that draft, even if it's a bad draft, that's okay. Without the draft, we won't be able to continue to give you feedback. Okay? Yeah, go ahead. Well, so we mentioned that the slope here is 2%, right? You use that slope, you'll be able to calculate, for instance, where 70, where the spots here are. Then you find out the integer contour tick marks along the curve and you connect them. Yes, yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move forward with the next submission. Okay. So how do you decide where the walkway to the front porch goes? This looks okay. They're roughly connecting to the middle of the porch. I would tend to move it over, just because I don't have to go through another unit's door to get to my door. And it seems an easy enough adjustment, right? Okay, so setting 1, 72, 72, 71. They look like all these numbers, they look reasonable. That one, you won't have a walkout basement over here. This one you could, but you don't necessarily have to, depending on if you want to. Those look like ADA accessible. That looks like ADA accessible. And here, you can have 1, 2, 3. Yes, you can have a walkout. You can have a walkout. All those can have a walkout. So it doesn't seem like you need any steps, but you could add steps. I think it's a requirement. Double check the statement. If there's a requirement of 2 to 3 steps, try to integrate into one of the units that makes the most sense. Looks like these two are roughly the same. Well, maybe this one, because once I move the walkway over here, you're getting a little lower. So the elevation here is a little lower than that one. And if we're using the same FFE, it makes more sense to put stairs in front of this unit than in front of that one. Okay, so check the statement. If there's a requirement for designing a few steps, put it onto the final townhome. Looks like you have the FFEs, that all the FFEs would work out. If in the case that, no, even if you have a 2% slope and this one, the calculation of that one is lower once you add your steps, then you would raise your FFE a little bit, just so that you can fit those 2 steps in. Okay, so after that, your step would be continue to work on the contours. I haven't read through your comments yet, so let me get back to that one. Still confused on how to get the spout elevation for the back of the building and retaining walls between the buildings. Are all of the ones in the front of the building supposed to be different? In front of the buildings, they are not. Well, yes, okay. So that's not FFE, you will use elevation instead. The porch, you will use EL. So at elevation being 72.57, that's the one, that's the elevation on top of the, the porch. But the porch could be raised up from a lawn surface, right? So these are the corner, these are the corner ground elevations. Those are the ground elevations. They can very well be different from the porch. Only in a gently sloped area where your lawn and your top of the porch kind of seamlessly connect, then they would be the same. The corner elevation would be the same as your top, the surface elevation. But in other cases, these spots, you would consider your contours together with those elevations, right? If, for instance, my 70 contour goes like this, and my 70 comes up here, and then I would go like that, connect over here, then here, it's not going to be 71.57. It will be very close to 70. Does that make sense? Yeah. So basically, your front porch, the concrete porch, raises out of the grassed area, and those corners you don't need to specify it right now, because they're bound to change once you figure out where the contours go. Okay. All right. Well, I know you had a question about the back of the building retaining wall. Okay, we can take a look at one set at once I read through this comment. Oh, so how do you look for where spout elevations is needed? You look for wherever there's a tangent point. So if there is 2 arcs that are connecting together, though the spots, when you click on CAD, wherever the points line up as the oh, I kind of forget what that, not the middle of an arc. The middle of an arc, you don't have to specify that. Whenever 2 line segments connect together, that's where you have to have a spout elevation. I would say there is a lot of them, right? For instance, I kind of remember there are 8 just for this portion in the middle. Yeah, that's correct. I do remember these being 4 and 4. With all of the different curves, how do I calculate it? Some of them, it especially when you come into the middle, it becomes a little fuzzy how you calculate that one. So you would have contours, for instance, looking like that. Oh, sorry. I am backwards again. I'm on the other side now. So you would do that. This is where, this area is where it gets a, there would not be just single answer for that one anymore. it depends on how you design that transition, right? But all these, you would, everything sort of on the west side, on the west side of the contour, you could determine that by the parallel lines of your contour. So if your 70 goes like this, these would be parallel to each other. Yeah, I'm not doing a great job making them parallel. And then if these contours go like this, you would continue that until you get to the transition area in here. And how do I transition once I get into the middle? I could, for instance, say, you know, I am going, now I'm not drawing integer contours anymore. I am drawing the 0.1 contours like in the middle, right? So some of these are potentially, well, how exactly would you draw the 0.1 contour? There's not one way of doing it, but this, for instance, what I'm doing here is a common way of how you transition in a diamond shape contour, right? So in the middle, if any of these, if any of these is in your calculation, you would do this. You would offset that by 0.1 and see where, see your tangent point, where it lands between your 0.1 contour. And in some way, you can estimate instead of accurately calculating based on the 0.1 contour. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. So, but no, once you get out of this transition area, everything would be sticking to the shape of the other contours. Okay, hopefully that's clear. All right. I think the one question left is about the back. Go here. Okay. So you have a 62.57. That's not going to, well, unless you're not walking out here. If you're not walking out here, then it's okay to have a 63.17. Okay. If that's the case, if you have a 63.57, meaning that this 0, 1, 2, 3, you are going to have a 3 contour. Well, that's a little conflicting with your 63.57. And this would actually be, you know, encouraging water to flow along your wall. So we're not, no, this would be not ideal to have that lower. If you want to have a 63.17, no walkout, make this 63.57 as this corner. And then you can drag your 63 contour up until where you have 25 or 26, because you want this to be at least 2%, right? So that's how your 63 would go. And then your 64 would essentially just come up and attach to this wall. But still, it needs to form a positive drainage. So still water needs to flow away from that wall in that manner. And here you have a 63.57, which means if this one is 63.57, honestly, without a wall, that cannot be, well, if you want to make this one the same as that one, you do need this wall, because otherwise this point and that point will be the same, and it doesn't have drainage out of the corner there. That makes sense? So if you want to make this 63.57, you would have a wall, and then you would do the same thing in measuring. Then the 63 would continue over. So your goal is to make that point the same across both sides of the wall, which means it will have a different slope if that spot is also 63.57, because these are the same, that is the same, this slope is steeper than what you designed for the side, the unit on the left, okay? And very likely you wouldn't need this wall. This might be easy, continue through, because you have the same FFB over here. Yeah, so I wouldn't expect that these walls are necessary. But once you get to this side, you do need the wall. Okay, so I'm going to have to clean this. And then if we take a look at the last unit, you'll be able to see, you know, how we design for the back. Now, we don't have to have a walkout for the last unit. And these would, in fact, be determined by your contours. So if this is 5, that is 6, and this is 7, my 7 could very well just go. No, it could do this, and my 6 could go and then do that. But the key thing is that I cannot make water, for instance, if my 6 goes like this, then that's wrong. No, I need to ask it to turn so that this corner can drain out, right? My 63 has to be here for this unit. And that's why you may need a wall over here so that you can attach your 5 on the other side to the wall, and then your 4 to the wall. And your 63 actually also needs to be on the wall. So let me move it up a little or extend that over. So my 4 can connect to the wall here. Of course, you can move you can move things up so that your wall don't need to be this that long, right? But essentially, the second one, the 2, this is the one that doesn't get moved, and that's the one that doesn't have to be attached to the wall, because your 3 has to be here, meaning that this portion gets moved up, and your 2 is the one that stays, and 3 is the one that is broken by the wall. Well, actually connected by the wall. And 4 and 5, they're not on the building here, so that they have to be attached to the wall. Does that make sense? So this is how you use the wall to connect space that are significantly lower here and space that are higher on the right side. Okay, okay, good. All right. Okay, I'm gonna move forward. Okay. So 116 is page. Okay. Good, I see contours. Cool. Most, well, the contour direction make a lot of sense. So, well, you can kind of tell that area. Yes, yes. Here as well, the last one needs to attach to a little bit higher, so it definitely won't drain water to the wall. Elevation the right directions. Am I missing any spot elevation? Am I missing? Well, you are definitely going to be having more contours connecting to this area, right? Well, there's no portion on, you can't cross the curb. So this portion, you will get rid of that. That connection doesn't feel good. Well, so this becomes a good example of illustrating where you connect, right? So if we suppose that we don't have the curb, then I have that. I have this. Well, you do need to double check. It doesn't look like the lines are mirrored, but maybe I'm wrong. But maybe I'm just, no, my eyes are not working well today. So how do I find where I connect to the curve? I do the half point. I do the parallel. So this means my 0.5 is over there. So which means this contour connect over here instead of here, right? Here, the elevation equals to where this is. So it's not 70.5, okay? That would be much lower than 70.5. So that's how you find out where my contour come out of the curve. Here, yeah, that doesn't look correct either because we're looking for 70, right? 70, you would look for where 69 here is. Looks like it's going to be, again, on a little bit far away, something like this. So that connection happens right here. And then don't forget to get rid of the half line. Yeah, yeah. And then you would have many more contours, you know, because we haven't connected the 68, 67 yet, right? So once you get to here, you probably heard that you would mirror that, so that's 69. Yeah, the 69 could very well be a closed contour, and the first contour out of here is actually 69. Now, if that's the case, your 69 would kind of come back and attach to the building, the side wall of the building. Okay, let me try to clear and zoom out. Yeah. Let's see, let me just verify here. Should be correct. Okay. So let's take a look at these contours. That looks like a good location. That connection looks good. This connection looks questionable. Yeah, this connection would probably be here. So that's probably where, what did I do? Actually open my home video? Probably. That's okay. So the next thing becomes, how do we check whether or not these are correct, right? So that's the 70 contour. And if this is 72.21, you need to know what this is. So if that's 2 steps, you're actually at 71.21 there, which means your 71, in fact, would go this way and cross the 70, cross your walkway, potentially doing that. But we don't know for sure whether the calculation of 3.0 is correct. Let me see, 70.5. So this is roughly 70.5. And then that's roughly 20 feet. 20 feet, 4.5. So you're getting, oh, 0, sorry. We're getting to 0.45. So that's actually 70.95. So 3% doesn't necessarily get me to above 71 yet. So I would say the first thing that you would do is to verify what the elevation, the orange dots that I had. Using that to find if there is an integer contour on your walkway. If there's a 71, then your 71 will kind of turn and hit the walkway, cross the walkway, and then hit the side of the porch, right? So that's how your 70 would go. And then depending on if, for instance, I have a 71 over here and I want it to hit my wall here, depending on how steep you want this space to go. If this, I don't think this will exceed 6-8%, so that's acceptable. But if you want to make the space a little flatter, you would do something like this, right? You would move 70 over, and then you can see, okay, then I can decide this will be 70.1, something like that. Then you can see the sequence of deciding on the spot elevation. And then 70 and 71, you would know the ground elevation here would be roughly 70.5. Yeah, and here would be a little bit higher than 70.5 because you want this to be a little different from that one so that you can drain better, right? So those are the steps for determining the spots on the walkway, then decide on where your contours go, and then decide on where your 70 contour, the next contour, want to go if you don't want the space to be too steep. And then you can see, okay, that and this will be determined by their relationship with the closest contour. Okay. Once you have this, now I have to clear again. You move forward, you move to the left, and then you take a look and say, okay, if my 70 goes like this, my 69 has to come out somewhere here, right? And it doesn't have to hit the curve that way. Well, that's actually determined by the slope of your contour. It could be. I can see the slope sort of changed again. If that line is like that, this is actually the same. Okay. From this point on, your slope changed. Okay, I can see why that's happening there. But it's the same thing. I would use the 60.25 and 69 and halfway points. So that's 5, 75, 69, right? So that's where your connection would be. So your 69 would kind of go out of here and then do this. So you don't have to consider the original 69 anymore, because you essentially have already cleared out that little beat, that little high area there. And your 68, we have a 67.75 somewhere. You would identify where 68.75 there is. Oh, no. Sorry. We don't have a 68 out of the, we'll need to look for, that's 4, 5, okay. 8, 67, everything here is above 68. So 60.75 needs to be somewhere over here, somewhere in the middle, somewhere over here. There's 67.5 on the curve. And that's where your 68 is. And then you can connect over here and then come back like this and connecting there. Or you can get rid of the 68 over here because that's a pretty small portion. It's okay. Now, if you want to say, I just want to directly go shoot from the 67.5 bottom of the curve and connecting to my wall, that's totally okay. Yeah, so now the rest, you get the idea of how to connect those. All right. Look. Yeah, Paige, once you make those edits that I suggested, work on this area first. Because you have to determine which, if 69 is a closed contour, if so, what are the contours coming out of the curve on that side, and how do my 68 and 67 go, right? There are 2 sets of 67 and 68. So that could be quite confusing in that area. Yeah, this is the next tricky area that you need to work on. I doubt that you would need a swell here. You know, your 67 could very well connecting here instead of attaching to that wall. And then these can go like this, okay? And those will determined by the first contour coming out of here. Yeah. Other questions you have for this submission? This here? Yeah. Okay. In this area, well, you would first find these contours first. Yeah, if that one goes like this, then no, depending on where that is, you would want to try to maintain at least a 2% slope surface, right? So if there's no contours, that could mean that this area is too flat. So it could be there is another contour looking like this, but we don't really know where exactly it is unless we figure out, you know, if this goes like this, right? Yeah, and if that's the case, mainly will be determined where that contour is, or if there is a contour based on that distance. You know, you would just want to make sure that it's not exceeding 50 feet so that you have enough drainage in that area. Very likely you would have at least one contour, even if it's a very small one. Yeah, in that area. Okay. All right. Okay, well, let me know if you have more questions, but I'll move forward to the next submission now. So this one is 117 Rose. Okay, you're there. Cool. So FFEs, how parking connect off the existing contours. And then, yeah, that very likely this is not necessary for you to have a small swell in that area. Let me take a look at your FFEs first. So 70.5 here. You probably did not add the curb height. So it's probably 0.5 off. Does that make sense? So you come here, you would step up the curve. So the elevation here would be 70.59 instead of 70.09. Okay, so it's not a big issue because you have a lot of steps over here, so you can easily just reduce one step to make it work. And here, you could reduce the slope here to make it work. In this area, you have a DI equal to 71.37, and going up 71.87. You know, it could be that this is not high enough, but you'll have to double check that one. Okay, could be because you are already pretty close to 72. If this is 2%, and then that's 50 feet, then, sorry? Then very likely your FFE will be higher than 72.46. The reason being, you know, if I TC is 71.87, and the length here would be at least 30 feet, even 35 feet could be possible. And your FFE and your top of the curve, the difference is only 0.6, right? 0.60. So this could be below 2%. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's mainly because that loss of that 0.5 curve height. Okay, so double check this one. Double check to make sure this is high enough for creating a 2% slope in this area. That one, that's 70.5 E, that is 69. I'm a little confused. So, okay, this is still the height that is the bottom of the curve. Well, you can easily just reduce one set of the step to make it work. So your FFE, the possibility for this third one being a little low, there's still that possibility. And the next thing is, these are not stepped by 0.867. Okay, they're not, the difference between the two houses are not by the interval of an 8-inch block. You remember that requirement? Yes. So that's the second thing you would need to adjust, but it's not going to be a huge difference. Okay, you can use this. You can use this as your basis, and then either change it to the same here. Based on the number of steps you have here, you can probably lower that. It's okay to lower that one if you don't want to have a walkout basement, or if you don't need to have a walkout basement there. Looks like you would be able to have basements for the second and the third house anyway. Okay, yeah, a little bit of work to do for checking the FFEs. So we did talk about the connection out of the contour outside of the curb. Roughly direction is like this, right? Rough direction is like that. You would need to connect to the 70 somewhere here, which is somewhere there. Okay, and this one, you'll connect to the 69. This one, you'll connect to the 69 somewhere here. That's 71. 71 is over here. So those connections needs to happen later. These, you would, if you have followed what I talked when I talked to Paige about the porch elevations, roughly these are the direction of the contours, but you have to figure out the spot on the walkway first in order to know exactly where they connect. Okay. All right. Okay. Here, if you're mirroring, this should be 70. Okay, that's 70, and this would be 70 instead of 69. Okay, anything else you want to ask? Okay, oh, good. All right. So I have 118, which is, I think it's Jake. Okay. How's your hand? Okay. Well, hope you feel better soon. Advice on 71 close contour in the parking lot. With set TFF be possible. Parking lot contours related to curves and contours around housing. So let's take a look at the what's the crown slope? You have a 1.4, okay, 1.4% slope. Yeah, if that's the case, I wouldn't expect that your angle would change. So if suppose this is the correct angle, that looks like it's correct, but you would still mirror that based on this and that. So if I am doing a perpendicular line from this spot to the crown, I would expect that, let me make it more perpendicular. I would expect that to be like this. Okay, mainly because I know that this curve is longer, right? So along that curve, the slope is actually smaller than along this curve. Now the key is to keep the center the same slope, or no, once you have a maintained or set crown height, when I am connecting the curb spot perpendicular across the crown to the other curb, those. So if I'm doing let me explain another way. If I'm doing a cross section here, the crown height will be the same. That's why I would use one of the lines to figure out where the connection point is on this side, and then do a perpendicular, and then just connect the crown point with the curve point. Okay. Okay. Sure. Let me get out of my room, and then I will be back. No, I don't have to. Probably just a sign would be good. Sounds good. Okay. So, all right, first thing is to fix the contours in the parking lot. The angle would be the same. Of that one and this one. Okay, so that's the first step. The 71 contour, you have that's reasonable. Okay, your 71 contour is a small contour that looks fine. The thing that is not looking exactly correct is the angle of that line. Okay, you would do something like this, and then try to connect based on, well, this would be roughly half divided by the line that you drew here. Does that make sense? Yeah. So honestly, if we, there's again not a single way or the best way to design that transition area. That's what we call a transition area. If you are saying, okay, when I get to the middle area, my contours start to change some direction, that would be totally acceptable. So what you drew here is not wrong. It just means when I get to this area, some of the space started to twist, right? But you would want to have an idea of when that tweaking starts, right? If I say, okay, I keep my contours of this line, all the way to here, and then you have your contour, it just means this space in the middle tweaks quite badly. Does that make sense? If I'm saying, if I keep the contour that I have in red in the middle, you can see that transition it's more gradual. Don't know if that makes sense. So if I say I keep my contours going like this, I'm using, let me move this one over so that you can see. I keep my contours going like this, and at some point I transition to my red line. You can see that they are still relatively parallel, meaning that my 0.2 contours are gradually turning into the red ones. Yeah, so you're trying to reduce that tweaking as you go. And you can also say, oh, I just want to come down to this. Now my contours would go up until here, and then I started to transition in a manner like this. That's okay too. So because we're not drawing the 0.1 very detailed contours in that area, it's left flexible how I interpret your transition. So what you drew was not wrong. It just means you know, the space once you get to that transition area, twist it more, or it twisted more severely than what I proposed as a more gradual transition there. Okay. Hopefully that's clear. Let's look at the FFE. I would definitely think that this is too high. Generally, your FFEs are pretty high. But if this is 70, right, and we're getting up from 70.5 there, your walkway would be pretty steep. Your walkway from here to there would be pretty steep. So normally these two are the easiest to make it ADA accessible from both the front and the back, right? Because the front is pretty high, we're getting up, and the front is pretty high here compared to there, right? And you have a longer walkway. So FFEs using these two units as your basis would be an easier way to get started. Then what you would calculate is somewhere here, you have 70.15, for instance. The top of curve will be 70.65, and then you measure the distance from your house entrance to the sidewalk. You use a 2%, and then if this is 30 feet, basically that will be 0.6, and you add the 0.6 to the 70.5, you're getting actually to 71 point something without any steps. You can raise that to 5%. Even if it's a 5%, 30 feet, 1.5, 70.15, you get 71.65. So you wouldn't exceed 72 at all, okay? So I would recommend, your next step to be revising your TFFE, starting with this unit and continue with this unit. And then the other two units, it's really flexible because you can add steps. You don't have to have a walkout basement. So those two would be much less, those two you would have more freedom to adjust their TFFE and BFFEs. But the second one and third one is the easiest. I would say is the easiest if you just start from here and measure that distance and use a 5 or 2% slope, to calculate without any steps what the FFEs would be. Okay. All right, so that's the FFEs. So contours around housing, I hope you have followed the previous review. Do you have additional questions about contours around the house? Okay, so first step, FFEs, and then start working on the contours in front of the houses. You understand the basics from the review, but if you have further questions, feel free to ask. Okay, hopefully we have a little bit of time after every review. Okay, so that's Jake's. Keep going. We have, let me see if you're here. Oh, hey, how are you? Good. Let's take a look. This is how the contours will connect. Okay. Well, from what I'm seeing, I see that your contours look pretty steep, the parking lot part. That's very, very low. And somehow they're not 9 feet apart. So something happened there. The top FFE should be 73.82 if it's 9 feet over that one. That looks okay. This one looks okay. Let me do the calculation of 0.171, 1.71. Doesn't feel okay. 12 out of 4. 3 out of 267. Doesn't, I don't know if I did my math correct. So the difference between 1.71 and 67, they're not. So that doesn't seem like an 8-inch interval. So I was talking about the differences between the two FFEs. So the FFE of the second house is 1.71, and that's an 8-inch block. So that's not an integer times an 8-inch block, right? Is it? It's not 3 times, not 2 times. Does that make sense? So the difference between these two houses, it needs to be in the interval of an 8-inch block. That's the building material. You do not want to. So the purpose of that, now if I am building the house, that's the FFE of the first unit. I do not want the FFE of the second unit to be in the middle. I want the house to be built like this. Instead of I'm drawing the facade. I would not want to have the building to be not aligned. The blocks need to be aligned with each other. So if you want to keep the FFE here, then I would use the 72.95 minus 2 times of 0.67, or 3 times even, right? 3 multiplied by 0.67 would be 2, right? So, or I would use 72.95 to minus 1. I can't do the math anymore. 4. So that would be the FFE. That seems to be closer to what you want here. Okay, so that's the first thing that I noticed. For this set, definitely recalculate the FFE over there. I think something happened. You're probably going down. Yes, you have, yeah, you have 68.75 here, and then we're going down to 62. That's not correct. Okay, so that's that one. Let's take a look at the contours in the middle. Well, I can see that your contour direction in the parking lot was not calculated correctly just because the angle, right? We talked about the side slope here being 2%, you know, because slopes are proportional. If that is 2.17, you should be roughly at a 45 angle. Okay, so you would need to recalculate your parking lot contours. When I look at the contours here, I can clearly see these two contours, their distances are less than 20 feet, which means you're exceeding 5% slope in your parking lot. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I would say, you know, recalculate the slope here. So you would have a correct angle. Let me kind of go back this way. So once I recalculate here, I would use a line along here where you want to create your swale, and then I would mirror it. I would basically mirror that one over there, which seems like what you did. But somehow the mirroring here, I think something went off. The mirroring made the distance, if it was a correct mirror, I would expect that this angle to be the same as that one. Basically, the slope here, that's too thick. The slope here, I would expect that to be the same as that one, but it turned out to be a lot steeper. So if I look at the distance from this line to that line, it's over 5%. Okay, so we'll need to fix the parking lot contour. Most of your FFEs look okay. The last one doesn't, and some of the calculations, well, fix this one first. And then I think this will work. And make sure they are off by the difference between the house FFEs are intervals of 8 inches. That's what you need to do for the FFEs. And for the parking lot, the first step is to fix the contour. Okay. All right. And I don't think you would get to 8% there. Let's use 5% as the maximum slope for the sidewalks, for the walkways. Okay. I think your slope will be lower than that. I think there is an error in your calculation. It might be missing the curve or some other reasons, but I would think the 72.95 is a reasonable elevation for the second one. Most likely you won't need any steps for this one because you're at 72. You're almost at 72 somewhere here. So something was off. If you did the calculation and it turned out I was wrong, feel free to come over, or we can do the calculation together to see. Okay. All right. Anything else you want to ask here? Contours at the top on the left side. Okay. Right. Okay. So they are not connecting at the right locations yet. Okay. If your contours, let me make it thicker. So if these are your 69 and you would look for where 60, the middle point is, and then you would draw a parallel line, and that's where you connect to your 69 contour there. So your contour here would connect from the middle point to, very likely it's to the building directly. And here you have 69, 70, same thing. I would do a middle point. So your connection point might be here. Could even be, oh, my angle was not so good. So somewhere over here, you would have a 70 coming out. That could be your first contours, and that's 71. Okay. Looks like I'm running out of space, so I may need to be moving these contours lower so that I have my 70 coming out of here and then can go to this wall. So that could very likely would be the pattern of your contours in this space. Okay. And then these, they need to turn. That's your 65, right? Yeah, if I clear and move down, if you don't need a walkout basement, then you could feel free. These might not need to be moved until you get here. If your 63 is over here, let me clear, I want to see a little bit more. So 0, 1, 2, 3, that's your 3. Your 3 might not need to move. If you don't need a walkout basement in that area, your 63 could stay somewhere here, depending on the slope that you want to design here. Okay, your 63 being here, then your 64, if you don't need a basement, then your 4 could come up here, could do this, and then could attach to the wall there. Does that make sense? Yeah, yeah. That's your 3. Oh, my bad. That 4 is over here. So it could do something like that. And that one you can delete. Okay, that's your 4. And your 5 can do this. Okay. All right. Other things? You're good. Okay. Move forward. I have sued. You here? I don't see you. Well, in that case, I will move forward. Jill. Jill, can you unmute to let me know you're here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, yeah, good. Okay. Yours, right? 1, 2, 3.
Yep, mine's 1, 2, 3.
Okay. So I'm not currently seeing parking lot contours. Let's work on that. TFFE, that looks to me feels like you have steps in all of your units. Is that correct, Jill?
No, I have steps in 2 of the units,
Give me a
but
second. My PDF is not operating. Okay, good.
I have steps in the 2 closest units, like the 2 most inward units. The ones on the outside are ramps. And the PDF said that 1 step is okay so long as it's right next to the, like right in front of the porch. I thought I labeled it, but I was wrong. It's 1 3-inch riser and 1 12-inch tread.
So if you are creating ADA accessible ones, we cannot have a step at all because wheelchairs cannot roll up that step, right?
Yeah, I have ramps on the outer houses.
If this is a ramp, that is a ramp, that is too high. The reason being we're close to 69 or 69.5. And in order for using that short distance to come up to 73, my sense tells me that this is too high for not having any steps. So you need a little bit of work on the FFEs. I would need to know those spots to be able to see which ones. My sense is if you get rid of the steps over here, the TFFEs might be lower, a little bit lower, but that's okay. You still would have walkout basement in the back, okay? And then
Okay.
these two are okay because you can add steps, right? I'm not convinced that you need to make this one that high. This one, if you can make it 71, 72, no, it might be enough to even create the basement, walkout basement there. So that one looks okay, but these two, let's remove the steps and see how what the FFEs will be. And then by that time, you should have a good set of FFEs to work with. Once you fix knowing these spots, recalculating the FFEs for these 2 units, you should work on the parking lot contours. Once you work on the parking lot contours, you should work on the contours over here. okay? And there's no swale across the full width of the apartments. Now,
Okay.
water would be draining from the house to the parking lots in this way. And then if you want to, you could start creating a swale going this way. You could create a swale going that way, but likely swales are not the absolute necessary features for this assignment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If you have swales, it will be in the locations that I drew on both sides of the complex. You don't necessarily have to have both. Now, very likely you can get away with a sheet flow pattern on the left side, and it's also possible that you don't necessarily create a swell on the eastern side either. But if you don't have the contours in front of, or draft the contours in front of your apartments, you wouldn't know where to start that swell anyway. That makes sense?
Yeah. And
Okay.
just to be clear, the outer house, like both of the outer houses on the left and right, the ramp is wrong, but on the innermost houses, the FFE is wrong.
Correct. Should be the other way around. You would need steps to get to 73.27 for the fourth one. You would need steps to get to the top FFE equal to 73.28. And let's remove the steps in front of the second and the third house to make them accessible by wheelchair. And
Okay.
that will require you to lower the TFFE and the TFFE of the second house and the third house.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Good. All right, Eliza. See, yeah, you're here. Good. Can you unmute?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay, 2%, 71, 73, and 5% to, this feels a little high. That feels a little high based on this calculation.
Mhm.
Can you let me know what the length here is? The walkway length?
Wait,
Might be 40.
it's
If it's 40, that gets you to 73.75. It's possible that you added 0.5 to your porch.
28.
This is 28 feet.
Yeah, 28.47.
Yeah, if that's the case, you wouldn't be able to get up to 73.15 there.
I might got wrong with that.
Because yeah, you're getting up about 1.5 foot. Yeah, 1.5 foot. And here we have 1.5. Well, maybe that my calculation was wrong. So this was okay. Yeah, that was okay.
Mhm.
And here, yeah, that should be fine too. And this one is 69, 70, 70. Yeah, that should okay. So your FFEs work. Let's change that to TFFE versus BFFEs to make it perfectly clear, okay?
Oh, mhm.
Here, you should be at 62.30.
Okay.
So this means that no walkout, that's totally fine. You should
Mhm.
still be able to make all these accessible from the back. And it seems like every one of these, you don't need the steps, okay?
Mhm.
As I told Sarah, you need to check if the assignment requires that you design at least one set of steps. Okay, if
Okay.
that's the case, it shouldn't be hard, should not be hard at all.
Mhm.
You could lower the slope here. Okay,
Uh-huh.
lower the slope here and then add a set of stairs, and maybe you would be able to make it work. For instance, lower this down to 2%, and
Mhm.
adding 2 steps, not changing this. Even if you have to change that, it
Mhm.
shouldn't be a big change. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so those are, no, as I explained to other folks, these you would decide once you have your draft contours in front of your house. So for you, the next steps
Mhm.
would be to check the stairs, to change the FFE if necessary, okay?
Okay.
Shouldn't be a big change, and then start working on your contours in the parking lot and then outside of the house, in front of the house. Now,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, you wouldn't be able to know where to start and end HPS and at what elevation unless you know what contour is here around HPS location, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so that's a little too premature to determine the swale. Well, the
Mhm.
location would be okay, but you wouldn't be able to know the specific elevations at all. And
Mhm.
these you have heard from review, those will change. You need to know the contours around this area to be able to determine what the elevations of the ground of the porches are.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. So you are, feel free to move forward. You have good sets of FFEs, and your next big thing is the contours.
Okay. So I need to do like the parking lot's contour so
Yeah,
that I can
start with
figure
the
it out.
parking lot contours. Yes, correct.
And then like how about like the porch FFE? Should that be the same as
The
like the
porch FFE will be the same. The porch elevation will be the same as your FFE, top
oh,
FFE. Yes.
okay.
Yeah. And then
Um
the ground elevation will be different, most likely different from your elevation here.
okay.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So
in this case, because if you have a shallow slope, they may be the same. They may be the same as the elevation, but you still can't say just because we don't know the contours yet,
mhm.
right? You can imagine if my contours go, for instance, like this, then this will be very close to that contour, right? And
Mhm.
those would be farther away. So those would likely be higher than those two on the ground.
Okay.
That makes sense? So
Mhm.
that's why it's not yet time to decide on the ground elevations for the porches yet.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
All right.
How about like the fourth one, like the back FFE? Is is it like too low or
Oh,
it's
this one?
yeah.
This one is 62.30. You don't have to have a walkout, so that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so you don't write, do not write FFE outside of the house.
Mhm.
You write it inside, so you don't interpret yourself. You wouldn't think, okay, this area would be 63.30. That's
Uh-huh.
not necessarily the case, right? If you
Mhm.
don't have a walkout basement,
Mhm.
your 66 here could attach like this, and this area would actually be 66. No, the corner will be above 66, which will be higher than your bottom FFE,
Mhm.
which is fine, right? So
Oh.
basically in cross section,
Mhm.
this is my basement and that's my first floor.
Mhm.
And if first floor is 72, it just means my ground here is in that location. So my FFE, BFFE will be 62, but the corner elevation outside of my house will still be 63. Oh, here, if this is the case, I'm at 66 over here. So that's 66, and this is lower, which is totally fine. I can still have a little bit of window there,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just can't walk out. I would have a window.
Okay.
All righty.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else?
I think. How about like, do I need to add like a retaining wall here, or should I figure out like the
Yes,
contour
you would
for?
need retaining wall. You would need retaining walls. So you would need retaining walls between these two units, just
Mhm.
because this is 64,
Mhm.
and you would need your, not that. So 64 is over here. My 64 contour might be there,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because I would want to have a 2% slope coming out of the 64.15 to the 64.
Okay.
Okay, that's my 64 contour, but my 66 needs to attach somewhere along this wall. So I need to extend the wall
Mhm.
for my 65 and 64. Because my 63 is the one that returns to being continuous, right? That's
Mhm.
the 3. My 3 can be here and no need to change. But my
Mhm.
64 has to stay on the backyard. So that means my 65 here needs to come up and attach here, and my 64 needs to come up and attach there.
Mhm.
That makes sense?
Okay.
This is the one that doesn't need to change.
Uh-huh.
And 4 and 5 needs to, you need to deal with the area here being significantly higher than the area there. So you need to have a wall to separate these two.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay,
All right. Thank you.
all righty.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, I'll move forward to the last submission, and this is Winnie. Can you unmute Winnie?
Yep, hello.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So, yeah, as I mentioned, swales will wait until you have your contours in front of your house. Retaining walls are most likely going to be necessary. No, it's not that when you create the walkout basement, if the next unit doesn't have a walkout unit, most likely you'll have to have the retaining walls in between these units. Okay. So if you continue to have plotting issues, Jonathan is here today. You please go to the cat room and ask for some help for plotting. In terms of your FFE, this one seems like you have stairs. That one seems you have 71.435, so that no steps. This one, you don't necessarily have to have steps either. That one, 69, 70. Yeah, this one doesn't seem like you have to have steps. So it looks like you're, except for the differences between the homes of the FFEs are not in 8-inch interval. They look reasonable numbers to me.
Oh, they had to be within an inch.
Their difference has to be in the interval of 8 inches.
Okay.
Yeah, so here seems okay, and that one 6, 7. Yeah, this one, if you are, for instance, if this one is 72.34, or actually 33, then that one being 73.00, the difference between them is exactly 0.67. So it's one block. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Yeah, so these two, one of them needs to change. If here you're already at 2%, then I would change this one to 73.10. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
so I think in terms of FFE, once you solve that issue, you can move forward. You can move forward into the parking lot contours.
Mm.
And there are some things that doesn't match. I don't think you need the steps here, and some things like 70.624 and the TFFE, and the slope actually goes that way. You can't exceed 5%. So those things needs to match. And here the same thing, we're at 69.84, and then we suddenly are at 71.34 again. So I tend to think that you're using the TC. If you're using the TC 70.20 and that slope, that might get you to this, but probably not that one. Yeah, that's too low. That probably is something that's from previous submission that you probably didn't turn off, something like that. Here we're at 71. That's a little strange, because if you are 71, you wouldn't be able to have a 6% slope and then get to 71.34. That's basically, you don't have enough slope to get to that. So there's some matching issues. Try to clean up, try to verify which ones are the correct number. Okay.
Okay.
You're at 71.44, so that's 71, that's reasonable. If this 70.93 as top the curve is correct, then likely this number is not. So try to review for every one of the unit and only retain the correct number. If the calculations are not correct, change that, modify that, correct that before you move forward to working on the parking lot contours. Does that make sense? Yeah,
Yeah.
the same thing. It's the same thing on this side. I see the TC being pretty high, and then that one is not significantly higher than this one to create a 2% slope. This is less than 0.5 in difference. If this is 28 feet, then you would have a higher FFE. Okay, likely you would have a higher FFE here. And this one is okay because you can add steps for that to work. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
No, that's it. I just wanted to make sure like which one of my numbers are correct before I moved on.
So let me zoom into and go over with you one more time. What? Okay, better now. Let me try to clear this. Yeah, it's kind of frozen. Okay, good. Now let me still use this one here. Okay. 71.44. If this is correct, then that is reasonable, but this is not. Okay. And we won't have a 69.84. We don't know yet. We don't know whether that could be possible. If this is correct at 71, that is too low. Okay, and this couldn't be 6%, right? because this is a very small difference between the 71.34 and your 70.9. Very likely you have a higher TFFE, no steps, and probably use 2% slope to recalculate the TFFE, and that would be the correct number. For this portion, for the third house, if the 71.93, no, should be 70.93. Okay, let me go back. If your bottom of the curve is 70.43, your TC would be 70.93. So it's not 1.5 difference there. So one of the numbers here, it's not correct. Yeah, the TC here would not be correct. If it's 70.93, that could be possible. This could be possible because you have about 30 feet over here. You're raising about 1.5. Let's see, 1.5 to, yeah, that could be possible, but the TC is not. BC could be correct. And then for this portion, for this last house, it's very slow. If you're 69.89 and 70.39, it's correct. If this is correct, you should be able to make it work by adding steps to create a TFFE equal to 73. I do not know. Okay, 7% is too high. Okay, sidewalk should be lower than 5. Because you can add steps, it would be easy to make the TFFE equal to 73 work. So if we go back and zoom out, the problematic TFFEs are for the second house, and the slopes of your walkways would need to be recalculated. So it's in an okay shape. It wouldn't require you to redo everything, but you can see some of the things don't match with others. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Alrighty. Okay. Unfortunately, I think I unmuted just now, so I don't know if that got recorded. But hopefully all that's sent in. Well, okay. How do I calculate the contour that's shaped like this? Okay, we don't know it's shaped like that yet. Okay, we work on the 71 first. We work on the 71. We work on the 71, and then, based on that, we would need to determine whether the next contour look like this. So our goal is to make this slope exceeding or the same as 2%. So it joins. Okay, so we have to figure out the 71 before we move on to the 72 in the middle. We don't know where it goes yet. Okay, it shouldn't be a problem because we can kind of expect that FFE here to be above 72. So the 72 will hit the side of the porch in some way. So the 72 most likely will be in this shape. Yeah, 50 feet from this one. Yeah. Oh, my arrow. Yeah. So the goal is to make the slope exceeding 2%. So we don't want this area to be too flat. So once you have your 71, you would offset. Now the line here could turn. Well, it could turn in other folks' submission, but in your submission, it looks like it could be a straight line from the curb to the side of your building. In that case, you can use this line to directly offset 50 feet to determine where 72 is. Yeah. Okay, so I see some question about the backyard. It is, do I have to move contours up or manipulate them? Okay. So if these spots are 63.49, you likely would need to, at least you need to measure this, right? Measure the 63.49 to the 63 contour. Looks like these are about 20 feet, the same as the site, the parking spot. If that's the case, you don't need to move the 63 because you have a 2% slope. Does that make sense? Yeah. The 60, if this is the same as the 63.49, you need to consider your 64, okay? 64, if I am hitting the wall like that, then that's okay. Yeah, well, it's better if it's up a little bit because you don't want this very spot to be 64. You want this spot on the corner to be close to what you have as 63.5. So I would say 64 would hit the wall like that. Yeah, in that case, you don't need to move. Okay. The location works, but the direction doesn't because the water it's draining to the wall. You have to turn the tail of the contour away from the wall. Yeah, you have to do something like this. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, it looks like your calculations are they're pretty reasonable because if I do this, yeah, they're about 45 degrees, which is what we want. Yeah. The 69 contour would also go like this, right? The crown would still, you would look for where 69.25 is, and then that's where your 69 is. Do a cross, do a perpendicular line there. So you look for 69.25 here and do a perpendicular line across the curve line, wherever it hits the curve, that's where you connect your 69 contour. Yeah. You would, so there is a portion of 69 here as well. You look for the middle point and then connect, right? The original point you have there looks pretty reasonable. As long as you were looking for like 69 in the middle and do a parallel line, right? So that's where your top of the curve equals to 70. For the 69, you would need to identify where 60, oh, this is actually where 68.50 is. And then that's where the 69 contour comes out of the curve. Does that make sense? Yeah, you need to look for where 68.50 as the bottom of the curve is located. Okay. All righty. Okay, looks like page is another page here. The other page. I'm gonna go look for her. She had some questions. Okay. So, does the 70 being here seem accurate? $70, which one is 70? Oh, you mean the tick mark here? Okay. When I start the spot elevation for the parking, do I begin with one of the BCs? Yes, you definitely, when you calculate the spots, you calculate BC and then you do the 0.5 addition kind of all together. This looking better. The last one, it's still not creating. Let's do something like this. Okay, now the ones that, yeah, there. How to find spots at the end of retaining wall? That we can talk about that later. I think my length to 5. Don't expect my calculations change. Okay, let's take a look one by one. $72. 2 is here, 1 is there, 69 there. This seems to be dividing pretty evenly, so 70 there seems reasonable. And then we have a 70 connecting this way. That's too thick. Let me change to a thinner line so that I can see a little more clear. Well, seems to me the angle are not exactly 45. Yeah, this would be 45. Right, because you have 2% over here and 2% over there. So it's the same size of the triangle. The two sides will be the same. So I would think that this will be more like that. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think once, yeah, here, 35. Okay. If the tick marks are correct, you can do a 45 degree, just straight directly do a 45 degree angle, then turn it over 45 degree, then you have that direction correct. Once you get to this side, you do have to calculate, right? Yeah. Yeah, the side is going to be a little different. So that's the first one. Let's talk about this 5% thing here. but I didn't leave space by the sidewalk where my calculations change. I'm not sure exactly. Mhm. Shorter, meaning that's 69.80. Do you mean you were trying to add something here? Oh, you don't have to connect them. You don't have to connect. You can connect them, but that does not change the slope along this way. That's okay. Yeah. Oh, you mean if we add this, I don't want this to be 5% anymore. I want it to be 2%, then this will change. That's correct. That's correct. You don't have to add it, but if you add it, you do want to make that portion 2% instead of 5%, because that's a cross slope. If that's the case, then you would change things. Yeah, if you don't add it, you don't need to change. Okay. Yes, yep. You can put it in the, yeah. You can put it in the first unit. It's easier to put it here. Then you can raise the bottom there, and it's actually easier to connect the contours at the back. Okay. So, will the spot elevation be here be the same as the ones I have on the back side? Well, that one, no. If we keep this set of FFEs, that is not accessible. Okay, that is not accessible, meaning my 67 can go like this. If my 67 go like that, that's 67.1. If my 66 go like this, then that is 66.2. Okay, that is definitely not going to be accessible from the basement. This one could. If this BFFE is 6469, that would be 6469, right? And then my 64 would be somewhere here. Okay. 2. We need 2. Yeah, and this one and that one should also should both be pretty easy. Now, then you would need 64 to be here, and then that space will be considerably lower than that one, right? So then that's why you need the wall there. Okay, you need the wall. Now we have 65 connecting up, and then you can ask them to do this. 64 connecting like that, and then that's your 64. Okay, then if that's the case, you actually don't have to have the wall being this long. It could be stopped between 64 and 65. And this one would be directly that we don't need that segment anymore. It's the small little thing. We don't need that. This will be back here. And then I can directly connect. Oh, 64. It was originally. If I want for it to be as close to where it were, I would add another line starting from here and then connect there. Okay, so that's how 64 and 65, 66 would go in this situation. If you have walls, if you well, you would need one hidden line, right? Yeah, that's how you distinguish. Help whoever is reading distinguish where the porch would be. Okay, So that's about the back. About the, yeah, calculating the parking lot, yes, you calculate the BC and then you add it up. Add a 0.5. Mm. So when you're calculating, I would have a layer that is all lines that I don't point, right? And then I would draw parallel lines to the contours. You know, it's easier to use the left because it's 45 degrees. So let's do that. So if I'm calculating this one, I would draw a 45-degree line to the center. So I would calculate this spot. That would be 7. That's the BC of the 0.5. Yeah, yes, yeah, and then you just add a 0.5 to the bottom of the curve. Now, if I were to do for this one, I would just move that 45 line or copy that 45 line, and that's here is where we calculate for this spot. Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay. All righty. So we didn't go through this. Anything else you feel? Here, right? You would work on the contours first. For instance, the TC equals to 70.85 and 70.6 over here, right? So the slope along this side will be different from the slope on this side. Yeah. And then here you have 2 spots. If there's no steps, that means along this line, it will be 71.83, if that's the case. So then you would have a 71 on the curve, right? That's 70, yes. Your 71 would be somewhere here. Does that make sense? Because we're close to 71 there. We're a little farther away from 71 there. That's okay, because these 2 slopes are not the same, right? The 71 contour would be somewhere there. Then you would look for where 71 comes out of the curve here by looking for where 71, yeah, I can't easily see where 71 is. Well, I'm looking for 70.50. It's a little confusing there. It's somewhere. Let me zoom out. Maybe. So. Yeah. So do you see where this is, where I'm going? That's actually the 0.5 contour here. Yeah, so it would be doing this. So that one may go like that. So you would need to calculate where 71 is here, right? Because 71 comes off somewhere here in the middle, and then this portion would be calculated, and then however you can connect to this, you could do, that's flexible. Yeah, but that line and this spot is not, right? Yes, and then you can decide, okay, if I want to turn directly off there to hit the porch, or do I want this whole thing to be pretty high? If I want the whole thing to be pretty high, then I would drag the 71 and let it hit over here. Yeah, but that one is actually, steeper than the one that I have here. The one that I have here, it's flatter in this, it's more gentle in this area. Yeah, so that's how you decide for 71. Yeah, no, you don't take calculate them. Yeah, yes. Right, yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, but I was glad that you made progress over the break and then reached out. Yeah.
Okay. I'll keep my.
Let me unmute here so that we can keep recording. So what I would do is I would draw a line again along this, right? And then I would specify for this to be 70.75 because that's the crown. 70.75, okay? And then here, it's going to be 70 point, this is going to be 69.75. So I am trying to look for where 70 is. If I divide this by 4 times evenly, this will be where 70 is. And that's where my 70 goes. Does that make sense? Yes, yes. If you draw, for instance, if you draw 2 lines like I did, to draw project 2 lines perpendicular to this line, and you divide this by 4 times, these tick marks, yes, yes, and that will be 70, right? Because it's 0.25. If you divide it by 4 times, it's, yeah, that's how you connect the 70 there. And then once you have this, you would essentially just mirror it. Yeah, mirror it, and then you get the correct angle. Yeah. This, yeah, if you can verify that, that would be great, but it looks like pretty close. This one looks, well, little off. So it's better to verify that. Okay. Yeah, but that's 45 degrees if you are doing the 2% slope down. Is that what you chose? Okay, yeah. Yeah, and then that's 45, should be 45 degrees. And you can just draw a line here and then rotate it for 45 in this direction. And then that's, yeah, you can draw a line, overlaps with the crown, and then turn that 45 degrees. And then that will be, yeah, that will be your contour direction. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Yes, yeah. Did you already, yeah, did you already have that line there? Yeah. Okay, okay, so then that's the correct. Yeah, yeah. Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. You can use the same as the unit, the house beside you. 73.13 should work. Yes. Yeah, both of them are 73.13. That may mean you need to add a step, but that's probably just what you need to do. Yeah, yeah. Cool. Alrighty, you're welcome. All right. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I am. Oh, hi.
You had a doctor's exam, so don't take up too much of your time.
Oh, it's a doctoral student.
Okay, well, what's it?
Yeah.
I have like a bunch of questions, but I guess you have like office hours. Sunday by chance.
Can you put some more for me?
A lot was like the distance between contours, like the way I measured contours, I wasn't sure if I did it correctly.
Mhm.
So I would go like, for example, like 73 feet along the curve, and I would find my like 70 contour and my 71 contour, and I would like just connect them. I'm not sure if that was the right way
You're
of doing
going
it or
into the
not.
middle way, right? No, if I have. No, if the shape of the painting, you would still find the this is the one side, and I project what curve is, the bottom of the curve here, right? So the top of the curve will be set, and that's how I can set one. However, the curve changes. Even if it changes, I would, extend the parallel line to the curve, and then that's where it comes out. So I would not measure it on the curve. I would use the parking lot as a contour to direct where this line is.
Okay, so you will start at like one of the high points with the slope that
Mhm. Yeah, so for instance, if I write a curve look like that, I would not measure halfway along the curve. I would extend that line. So I know the bottom of the curve here is definitely not high. So the top of the curve is 71. So the 71 is still this.
So how would you find this 70.5 along the curve?
Well,
If you
I
were starting
find, yeah, I find here and you can have parallel. But all the powers you work on this one, on this one.
Okay,
And so that the bottom of the curve is,
okay,
so the top is right. That's how if I have to figure out.
okay. Yeah, I'll try to do that.
Yeah.
I have a question about the babies, comment, comment.
Mhm. Yeah.
So third, I'd like one question at the top of the, I mean, the given point in or a point, if you can find the two slopes that kind of come close together, you know? But it didn't look like we did. We had like, I think it was exercise that we were, there were two intersecting points. And you were behind
Okay.
the-
We're not. Like,
Okay.
don't worry about that. For the last
Okay.
two,
Okay. Guess I'll- yeah, like all the buildings on elevation, be calculated like related to the curve. So it should be always measured down from the curve to on elevation line. And if I was to get that,
only the one, only the one for the property.
okay,
Once you pass the one, also you use the property for the fourth round.
and you would just estimate.
A lot of.
Covered that. Covered that. My last question was just about like wrapping the conflict. I think we went over getting the keys. Yeah, that's my question.
If you're not able to get quick percent.
Okay,
You can do that will be with I believe.
okay,
Many times we like we might just get it sometimes.
okay. And then like I'll try and show Thursday, you'll be reviewing this, so everyone else's stuff, but here's time at the end.
Yeah, I think,
Okay. And then my last thing was about my hand.
yeah, what did I do?
Mhm.
I think,
He did, yeah, I was just gonna say, I have a consultation Thursday morning. And then they'll determine if I need like any additions or anything. So I have like a better, I guess, status. Of it.
post it,
Okay,
post it in the file.
okay, cool. All right, well, thank you.
I missed it. It was the one before Thanksgiving, the Christmas before Thanksgiving, around when the San Francisco trip was. And I completely forgot to say that I was gonna miss it. Is there a way I can retake it?
Can you send us, you know,
Yeah, I had sent one to Stuart before, but I never.
um,
Evan. I might have
I'll
missed it then.
look it up, I'll look it up and then
Okay.
usually. Okay. All right.